Hi, I'm Allie. Join me for this fun octagram pendant necklace design that you can use some cabochons, tubelets, and some of our collections. Remember, if you do want any supplies, go ahead and look below the video in that little down arrow in the right-hand corner if you're on a mobile, or if you're on your desktop right below the video. It gives a description and links to get back to the website. That way you can gather your supplies. Let's get ready to get started. So to begin our pendant, we are using tubelet beads. If you want to switch it out, I know it's going to be a question, to using bugle beads or something like that, you're just going to have to look at the count and kind of figure that out. We are using some tubelets, some Delica beads, 11 Miyuki brand, and then we have our 25 millimeter cabochon, the Czech cab. So we're going to start out by doing our pendant portion. Once we're done with the pendant portion, then we are going to go in and do the sides and show you how to do that. The first thing we want to begin with, though, is a stop bead. So a stop bead is a bead that is going to go onto our size 6 gray dragon thread down to the end of the project, leaving about an inch left with our size 10 needle and going back through that once and then twice. That's going to prevent this bead from coming off, and that way we'll be able to continue with the design. So the first thing we are going to do is add our original set of our tubelet beads. The original set of tubelet beads is actually going to be this set here that's in the back. So the set that's here in the back, you'll notice that it's that octagram 8. So we're going to do everything in kind of a series of 8. I want you to put on 1 tubelet, followed by 3 of your Delica beads, followed by tubelet, 3 Delicas, etc. And we're going to do that a total of 8 times. Once we have that pattern of 8 on, so the tubelet followed by 3 Delicas, that's our pattern 8 times, you're going to take your needle here and we are going to start back at the stop bead, and we're going to go through that first tubelet, those first 3 Delicas, and then through our second tubelet and bring our needle and thread out. This creates a loop, which is going to be the foundation for the back of our pendant. From here, what we're going to do is actually go in and do a little peyote stitch and kind of establish that. Coming out of the tubelet, I want you to add 1 more Delica, skip over the first Delica in that set of 3, sew through Delica number 2. So we're adding a bead, skipping over, sewing through, adding another bead, and sewing through the next tubelet. So we're going to add 2 Delica beads between each tubelet. And see how you get that nice pattern here? So on goes, and just pull and make sure you're not showing any extra thread here. On goes a Delica onto my needle. I sew through bead number 2. Coming out bead number 2, I add a Delica, skip over bead number 3, and sew through the tubelet. Again, we are going to do this just like we've been doing, a total of 8 times. I have 2 done. We've got 6 more to go. After creating that initial loop and sewing through your last tubelet beads, you also want to sew through Delica bead number 1 that you added in that first series of 8 that we just finished. You're coming out through Delica bead number 1. You're going to add a bead, and that second Delica bead that we put on between the 2 tubelets is going to be the second bead that you sew into. You're going to sew into that one and sew on out. You can see that stacks 2 beads here in the middle of the peyote stitch, so it looks like 2, 2, 2. Coming out then, the second Delica bead, I want you to add a Delica, add a new tubelet, add a Delica. Skip over the tubelet bead and sew in to the next Delica number 1 of that second group of 2 Delicas. Add a Delica by itself, sew through Delica bead number 2. Again, that establishes kind of that look of 2, 2, 2, adding then above the tubelet bead, another 11, tubelet 11, and sewing through the next 11 after that tubelet. So what that's going to do is create almost a secondary stack of tubelets on the exterior row. That is going to be the row that we use to connect our little octagram points onto. So far what we've done is this back first row, and now we're establishing that secondary row that runs right around our cabochon. So continue going on and doing so, adding in all of the tubelets, as well as that extra Delica between each one of those 2 beads that you just added. As you finish up your sets of 8, your last piece that you're putting on is the Delica, Tubelet Delica, and then sewing into bead number 1 that your thread was originally coming out of. That completes that outer circle. You can kind of see how it's sitting. And what we want to do is get our thread and needle to come out that second set of tubelets. So how are we going to do that? We're going to take our thread and needle through bead number 1 that we added in the last go round. We're going through that second Delica bead. Coming out through that second Delica bead, we are going to step up through the first Delica prior to our first tublet, and our thread is going to come out that first tublet. And now we're ready to go for the next step, which is super easy. Super easy. Take 4 Delicas, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, that guy's a little one. Once those 4 Delicas are on your thread and needle, guess what? Sew into tublet number 2. Easy go round. 4 Delicas on. Sew into tublet number 2. So again, continuing that 8 times, just connecting that secondary tublet that we just added on the outer row, adding in 4 Delicas between each. So then coming back here, finishing up that group of 4, we're going to go around that outer circle one more time. Going around that outer circle, we're going to add in 8 more tubelets. Coming out of the first tublet, I want you to pick up a brand new tublet, sew through that tublet, through those 4 seed beads that your thread is currently kind of adding. Let that third tublet sit right on top. Sew into your next tublet. After your Delicas, add a tublet. Go back in to the front side or the top side of that tublet, circling around the thread, bringing that tublet right on top. Go through the next 4 beads. And obviously, just like we've been doing, everything we're doing, you guessed it, we're doing it in a set of 8. So on goes the bead all the way through, kind of reinforcing that outer edge and adding those in. So I have 3 done and I have 5 more to go, adding that third layer of tubelets onto the design. After adding in that third row of all of your tublet beads, adding in the final one, I want you to go through that next set of 4 Delica beads, as well as through the next one of your tubelets, kind of locking that in place, and then go through and step up through that first tublet that you added in the 3rd row. At this point here, we're ready for our cab. Now, we have not secured the back, so if you're like, my cab is falling out the back, don't worry about that. I just don't want you to get too far into this next step that you end up not putting in your cab. So we're going to put this to the side, and what we are going to do is add in 1 and 2 Delica beads. Obviously, that's less than 4. So what that's going to do as we sew into the next tublet that we just added is bring all of those tubelets towards the front, almost creating a little bowl right there or a little wheel. Add 2 more Delicas, add your needle and thread through the next tublet. Before you get too far in this, that's where I'm like, you want to add your cab because you want to make sure that that tension is correct. So I'm going to add all of my 2s between the beads. So all of my 2 Delicas, going around and catching them all. I'm going to record this whole thing here and then show you when I pull. So ready, the cabochon, which you can switch out for lots of different cabs. I'm using the cab collection, so that way I get options for colors all in one. I'm pulling the tubelets through, and if you have a great cab that you're using, make sure to post a picture of your design of this octagram pendant in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's a great way to share and give to others inspiration and ideas. So here we are doing those last 2 beads, going through that first tublet, as well as through the first 2 Delicas that we added, and then that second tublet. Now you notice I haven't put my cab in yet. Now's the time. We're going to put our cab into kind of that little wheel and give a nice tight pull. Again, it may fall out the back, that's fine. We just want to make sure that we're going around the front and kind of getting that nice established pool. From here, I'm going to go and sew the whole way around that line of beads and the tubelets that I just added. So whole way around, going a second pass of thread through, which is always recommended for both the front and when we get to it, the back of the design. So I said it might be slipping out the back. We still have another step to pull that even closer to the back as well. So right now we're going to tighten up the front. Take your thread and needle the whole way through once, twice, even 2.5 if you want to. We'll get ready then to add our embellishment before going back to close up the back. Once you have that good amount of strands going through the front of the design, and you can see I like neutral tubelets because then they kind of match with anything, we're going to get to the back and secure the back, and then we'll put our points on. So to secure the back, you're coming out of one of your tubelet beads, and we are going to sew back through the tubelet that sits behind it. And we'll separate our thread out a little bit, and we might as well go back through those Delica beads and back to the next tubelet and out. If it goes through another tubelet or another Delica, don't worry about it. Just sew that back out here. And where we're going to want to go is down the thread path line. So remember, we had a Delica that was before that tubelet bead that we're going to go down through. And then it went back through that bead right there. That's where it came out of. Going through then the peyote stitch lined up here, we're going to go through those two Delicas. Then we're going to go through the tubelet. And then what we're going to do is start to tighten this up. And how are we tightening it up? We are going to go through those two Delicas that are at the edges. So you're going to take your needle and thread through Delica number 1, and then also through Delica number 2, and through that tubelet. So I'm not adding any beads, I'm just sewing right through beads 1 and 2. What this is going to do is bring those Delicas closer, almost into a point, and tighten up this back. So again, coming out to the tubelet, grab Delica number 1 at the back, grab Delica number 2 at the back, and give that a nice tight pull and bring those Delicas closer together. You'll notice when I pull, I'm pulling towards the back interior and tightening that up. Just like we did on the front, we are going to do this 2 times. If you're having a lot of trouble or you have a 24mm versus a 25mm cab, you can also always add another layer of tubelets like we did here, just doing that square stitch, adding them on and adding another set of tubelets to the back. The other thing that you can try at this point, if you want to, is whether or not you want this to be the front of the design and the points to sit back a little bit, or whether or not you want a more simplistic kind of geometrical front. So those are 2 decisions, how you're putting your cab, and then right now, just tightening up the back, sewing through all the tubelets, and then just skipping and doing those 2 Delicas, tubelet, 2 Delicas, 2 times to tighten that up. After securing the back, what we want to do is bring our needle and thread to the front. So you're going to come out of a tubelet and go into that peyote stitch here, just going straight across those beads and just kind of wiggling along that line, because you always want to make sure when possible to not have the thread showing. It's just good practice and makes for a nice sleek design. From here, I'm going to go through that Delica leading up to this outer tubelet, through the tubelet, and then also through beads 1, 2, and 3 of that group of 4 that sits between each one of those exterior tubelets. When we come out that group of 4, that's where we're going to go in and add our points. We're going to come out between beads 1 and 2, and then exit between beads 3 and 4. So to do so, we're going to grab a tubelet, a Delica bead, and a tubelet. We're going to go over to the next group of 4 beads on that outer edge, and we're going to sew through beads 1 and bead 2 and bead number 3. Coming out there, grab your next tubelet, Delica, tubelet, skip over to the next one, and go in and add in your sew through your 2 Delica beads, 2 and 3 from the next group of 4. And see how these peaks are very easily forming. We're going to go in and continue this 8 times. So there's 3 little peaks, 16 beads in total. I have 8 more to add. So at this point, we are done with all of our tubelet beads. We've added in all of our 8 points. We get that nice geometric shape. And what we're going to do is go in and make them a little bit tighter so they're not flopping and flipping all around. Coming out through bead number 3 of that first group of 4 that we accessed, I want you to sew up through the tubelet, through the second tubelet. Notice I did not go through that Delica bead. The reason being, that Delica bead is going to pop out and be a nice point. See? From here, pick up 1 Delica bead and then continue around. So through the next tubelet, tightening it up. So down through the second tubelet, not the Delica bead. Give a nice tight pull of the thread after it. Add another Delica and then up to the next one. So it pops a Delica between the tubelets, kind of making it cohesive and look like a nice little pyramid in there, as well as tightens up the tubelet beads and makes that Delica bead sit up. So go ahead and continue around, adding in those Delica beads. I've got 2 there. I need 6 more to add. And then we're going to tie off our thread, and we're going to do our necklace with a new piece of thread. After reinforcing that outer edge, you can see how much more it stiffens up, and it really needs some manipulation to move, which is good. That's what we want. So from here, we need to get from our last of our tubelet beads. So I'm going to go through the tubelet bead after that last 11-0 gets added. Whoops, I'm going the other way. Already did that. And then from here, I need to come down into the design and get to the back. So how am I getting to the back of the design? Going through those 2 seed beads, then down through seed bead number 3, through the next tubelet. So again, you're just showing backwards. Hopping from one tubelet to the other. Going here. This is my opportunity to reinforce one more time along the back. And then when these 2 thread ends get together, I simply take off the bead stop and I tie them together in a simple square knot and burn down. That's going to make my pendant independent from the necklace. We're going to be building the necklace right to it. If you don't want to do that, you can simply add a wire guard or a jump ring on top of one of the points to make it that you can access it and put it on a chain or something like that. Once you're done creating the necklace, if you want to, or the pendant rather, if you want to continue on to create the necklace as well, so you can hang it and it makes it one cohesive unit. Now, what I did is already strung a lot of it, so you don't have to watch me just pick up beads, pick up beads, pick up beads. How did I start and how did I attach the clasp? That's what I'm going to go over. So I have here my stop bead, and I've sewn through one of the back tubelet beads at the back of the piece. And then I started a pattern with tubelets as well as some of the mixed rondelles from the rondelle collection. And I've done both pendants with the same CAD collection and rondelle collection, just so you can see. Creating a unit of some tubelet beads along with some colors of rondelles that match, and then tubelet. Changing up the pattern between the two, you can change it up to whatever you want. And I'm attaching to just a simple ball and hitch clasp. So going through the tubelet, attach all of your beads, sew through your ball and hitch clasp once, loop through twice. So back through all of your beads, back through the tubelet, which is going to bring you right next to that stop bead. Ignore the stop bead for now. Do the same exact pattern on the other side. When you get to the other side at the end of your design, however long you make it, you're going to sew through your clasp. This is what I did on the first side as well. If you have a wire guard or a wire guardian, you can definitely use that. I don't want to inhibit people that don't have those supplies from creating and making. You can always add in those little additional things and make it a little bit more polished. If you don't have them though, it's okay. You can do it this way. Go through the clasp once, go through the clasp twice. That loops 2 pieces of thread around the clasp. Pull that down next to the project by pulling the thread, and then take your needle and thread the whole way back through that line of seed beads, making sure not to miss any. And then when you get back down through that line, you get to take the stop bead off here and tie those 2 thread ends together, then burn off the end just a little bit so you don't see any of that connection unit. So it'll look like it has the necklace portion coming right out from that center pendant as you create and wear your design. You can make the pendant as complicated or as simple as possible. If you want to add in some crystals here between your peaks, even if you want to decorate the peaks more, adding more seed beads, you can really change up this octagram design to make it your own and to fit with supplies or collections that you may already have had. Thanks so much for joining me on this fun octagram design. It's really a nice geometric look around a circular cabochon to get that kind of opposing looks and viewpoints of shapes. Remember, if you do need any materials, look below the video. There's links for you to get to our website there. As always, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads, and stay tuned for our next inspirational video.